"You don't belong here." Those were the first words that ever came out of her mouth. Not a single hello, not a casual welcome to the neighborhood, just 5 sharp, biting words, heavy with judgment and contempt, like a blade cutting through the quiet hum of my first day in my new home. I had only owned this house for a few hours, a place I had imagined as a sanctuary after a long, draining chapter of my life. And yet the hostility was instant. A few days later, the same woman shoved me to the ground on my own front lawn, her hands firm and unyielding, before I could even process what was happening. She screamed and cried out to the police, claiming that I had attacked her. Trembling, sobbing, acting the part of the terrified victim with such perfection that one of the officers instinctively reached for his handcuffs, ready to place them on me. What she didn't realize was that every second of her performance had been recorded. Every shove, every word, every dramatic gesture captured clearly by the security cameras I had installed around my property. And what she really didn't know was that I wasn't just another resident. I am the Attorney General of Virginia. So, before we dive into the chaos that followed, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop a comment below. And if stories like this fascinate you, stories of confrontation, truth, and justice prevailing, hit that subscribe button now, because this is just the beginning. Now, let me take you back to the very start, the moving day that should have been filled with excitement, hope, and new beginnings.
The moving truck pulled away just before 4 p.m. that Tuesday afternoon, leaving behind a trail of cardboard boxes and the faint smell of fresh paint. I stood in the driveway of my new 4-bedroom home in Cedar Grove Estates, a quiet, tree-lined neighborhood just outside Richmond. Cherry blossoms stretched along the walkway, their petals drifting lazily in the spring breeze. The air carried the earthy scent of fresh mulch mixed with the crisp promise of new beginnings. After 18 grueling months of divorce proceedings, this house wasn't just bricks and mortar. It was a symbol of freedom, a clean slate, a place where no one knew my name, my past, or the mistakes that had weighed me down. I had imagined this day countless times, walking through the front door, inhaling that new home smell, and finally feeling a sense of peace. I was halfway through hauling boxes into the foyer when I noticed movement from the corner of my eye. A man jogged lightly up the driveway, carrying nothing but a warm, easygoing smile. Marco Delgado, early 30s, salt and pepper stubble, the kind of neighbor who seems to appear right when you need help without asking. He offered a hand with the heavier boxes, his energy infectious. As we stacked them near the entryway, he leaned closer, lowering his voice so that only I could hear. "Just a heads up, watch out for Karen Whitman, HOA president, corner house. She's intense." I gave him a small, knowing smile. "Thanks, Marco. Don't worry. I've spent enough time in law enforcement to handle difficult personalities." He raised an eyebrow, a flicker of curiosity crossing his face, but said nothing more and returned to his jog back down the street. By 5 p.m., the security team had installed 3 cameras, one covering the front yard, one aimed at the driveway, and another monitoring the side entrance. Years in the justice system had taught me the value of documentation. Every case, every confrontation, every threat had been won or lost on the evidence. And now, even before a single incident had occurred in this neighborhood, I was prepared. Every angle recorded, every moment captured. The house, once a symbol of hope and renewal, now carried an undercurrent of tension I couldn't yet see, but would very soon. I was sipping a glass of chilled white wine on the back porch, letting the late afternoon sun warm my shoulders, when I heard it, a sound that immediately set my nerves on edge. The sharp, deliberate click of high heels against concrete, echoing across the driveway like a warning. My heart skipped a beat, a flash of unease piercing the calm I had tried so hard to cultivate. I set my glass down and stepped to the front of the house. There she was, Karen Whitman,
Blonde, late 50s, arms crossed, standing at the edge of my driveway like a general surveying a battlefield. Her eyes scanned the property from the flower beds to the driveway, lingering on details as if she were judging not just my home, but my very existence. There was no greeting, no smile, just a cold, meticulous appraisal. Finally, her voice cut through the air, sharp and precise. "Who are you, and what are you doing here?" I kept my tone steady, measured, calm, despite the tension twisting in my stomach. "Evelyn Moore," I replied. "I just purchased this home." She let out a sharp, clipped laugh, the kind that cut through the air like glass. "We'll see. This neighborhood has standards," she said, before pivoting sharply on her heel. Her stiletto heels struck the pavement in a metronomic rhythm, each step a countdown to whatever she had planned next. I watched her go, feeling a chill creep down my spine. There was a tension in the air, a quiet menace that told me this was only the beginning. The house that felt so promising just hours before now seemed like a stage for something far more intense than unpacking boxes and settling in.
3 days after that first cold encounter, the harassment began. It was subtle at first, almost bureaucratic, but laced with the unmistakable sting of targeted malice. I found an official HOA notice in my mailbox, its crisp envelope standing out against the ordinary jumble of bills and flyers. The notice was signed by Karen Whitman, and it cited me for multiple alleged violations: trash cans improperly placed, a vehicle parked too close to the curb, and landscaping that failed to meet community standards. I carried the notice inside, flipping through it carefully. Each accusation was baseless. My trash cans were placed exactly where the guidelines specified. My car sat neatly in my driveway. The landscaping had been maintained by the previous owners and hadn't been altered in the slightest. I took a deep breath and drafted a polite, professional email to the HOA board, including photographs to prove my compliance. But Karen ignored it. Silence. Instead, she escalated. Over the next 48 hours, her white SUV became a fixture near my driveway every morning, never blocking me completely, but close enough to send a message. She was watching, and she wasn't going to let this go. Then came the next violation notice, alleging an unauthorized mailbox modification I hadn't made, and a third, that my outdoor lighting exceeded some vague brightness regulation. Every interaction, every notice, every threat was meticulously documented. I labeled folders on my laptop, time-stamped photographs, cloud backups, my habit from years of building legal cases. Every detail mattered. Every moment could be crucial. But it wasn't just paperwork. It was the weight of intimidation, the small, calculated ways someone can make you feel unwelcome in your own home. The quiet mornings filled with tension, the unnerving sense of being watched, the tiny digs that felt larger because they were so deliberate. And yet, I didn't panic. Years in law enforcement had taught me one thing: preparation and patience are weapons just as powerful as confrontation. I was ready. If Karen wanted a fight, I would meet it, but on my terms, with evidence, with poise, and with every move recorded. The neighborhood that had promised a fresh start now hummed with a subtle, mounting tension. Every day, the stage was set for what I knew was coming, the moment when words would turn to actions.
It was the 5th day since my first tense encounter with Karen Whitman. The sun hung low in the late afternoon sky, casting long shadows across the front yard. I was tending to the rose bushes along my walkway, the spray of water glistening on the petals, trying to calm my mind and focus on something peaceful. But then I heard it, her voice, sharp and cutting, slicing through the calm like a knife. "You think you can just ignore the rules?" I froze for a heartbeat, then turned. Karen was storming across the lawn, her face flushed with fury, her finger already raised like a weapon. Every step she took seemed to reverberate with purpose, a deliberate intrusion into my sanctuary. I switched off the hose and turned fully to face her, keeping my voice steady, even as adrenaline surged through my veins. "Miss Whitman, I haven't modified anything on this property. You're welcome to inspect the fence." She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, a sweet floral fragrance now tainted by the sour edge of anger. "You people always think you can do whatever you want," she spat, "moving into neighborhoods where you don't belong, thinking the rules don't apply to you." I took a careful step back, my tone calm but firm. "I'm going to ask you to leave my property now." And then it happened. Her hand shot out with sudden force, shoving me hard in the chest. I stumbled backward, my foot catching on the garden hose, and fell onto the grass. My forearm scraped painfully against the stone border of the flower bed. For a moment, I lay there, stunned, more shocked than hurt, looking up at the woman who had just assaulted me in broad daylight. Karen stood over me, breathing hard, her expression a mix of triumph and rage. "Who's going to believe you?" she hissed. I drew in a slow, steadying breath. Years of law enforcement experience flooded back, the knowledge of how these confrontations play out. It would be my word against hers, but I had something she didn't: evidence. Every word, every shove, every threatening gesture had been captured by my cameras, and most importantly, I knew my rights and my power. I rose slowly, brushing the grass and dirt from my clothes, locking eyes with her. "That was assault, Miss Whitman. I am asking you once more to leave my property." She let out a short, harsh laugh, then pivoted and walked away without another word. Her heels clicked a rhythmic warning across the pavement, but she didn't look back. I watched her go, then glanced at the blinking red light of the security camera under my porch eaves. Every second had been recorded, every action documented. 15 minutes later, the sound of sirens shattered the quiet. 2 patrol cars pulled up, lights flashing, and I stepped onto the porch as officers approached. A tall white man with a crew cut and a Latina woman with a hand near her holster. Across the street, Karen had already started her performance, dabbing at her eyes and sobbing dramatically in front of a small gathering of neighbors. "Ma'am, keep your hands where we can see them," the male officer commanded. "We received a report of an assault. Karen Whitman claims you attacked her without provocation." I kept my hands visible, my voice calm and measured. "Officers, that is not what happened. I was assaulted. She came onto my property, shoved me to the ground, and threatened me. I have the injury right here." I lifted my forearm, showing the scrape that was still fresh and raw. Officer Reeves glanced at the wound, but then looked toward Karen, who had now escalated into full theatrical sobs. "I'm 60 years old. I was trying to welcome her to the neighborhood, and she just attacked me. I was terrified for my life." Neighbors murmured, a few shaking their heads, already beginning to question her narrative. Officer Martinez stepped closer, her posture shifting. "Ma'am, we're going to need you to come with us for questioning." She moved toward her handcuffs. I felt the cold weight of presumed guilt, a sensation I had seen countless times in courtrooms, but I remained calm. Panic would only make things worse. "Before you do that," I said steadily, "please review the security footage from my cameras. They recorded the entire incident." Karen's voice pierced across the street, shrill and defensive. "She's lying. There are no cameras. She's making things up to cover what she did." I pointed directly to the 3 cameras mounted under my eaves and at the corner of the garage. The red lights blinked steadily in the fading daylight. "Those cameras have been recording since Tuesday. Every interaction I've had with Miss Whitman is documented." Officer Reeves and Martinez exchanged a glance, the confidence in Reeves's expression flickering for the first time. I reached into my back pocket and pulled out my wallet.
Slowly, I held up my state ID alongside my business card, embossed with the seal of the Commonwealth of Virginia. My name is Evelyn Moore. I am the Attorney General of this state. Silence. Officer Martinez's hand dropped from her holster, and Officer Reeves blinked twice, staring at the ID as if it had suddenly transformed the entire scene. Karen's sobs stopped abruptly, her voice now sharp and high-pitched, cut through the air. "That's impossible! She's lying again!" I maintained my composure, my tone measured. "Let's handle this by the book. The footage will show exactly what happened. I've already asked my deputy AG to send someone from my office to document this process. Everything will be transparent." Officer Reeves stepped aside to radio dispatch. Fragments of the conversation reached me. "Verify credentials. Attorney General. Confirmed." When he returned, his demeanor had shifted completely. Careful, professional, aware of the stakes. "Ma'am, we'd like to review that footage if you're willing to show us." I nodded and led both officers inside, pulling up the feed on my laptop. The video was crisp, clear, damning. Karen marching across my lawn, Karen jabbing her finger in my face, her shove, my fall, me rising with my hands visible, and her smug retreat, all documented. Officer Martinez watched the footage twice, silent, expression hardening, not at me, but at the situation. "This directly contradicts Miss Whitman's statement," she said quietly. Reeves rubbed the back of his neck. "We're going to need a new statement from her." At that moment, a familiar voice called from the porch, Marco Delgado. "Officers, I saw the whole thing. Miss Whitman shoved her. Miss Moore never touched her. I'll put that in writing if you need me." Independent corroboration, a witness. The case against Karen was building itself. I excused myself to call Alexander Green, my deputy AG. "Send someone from the office to document this. Everything by the book. No shortcuts." He agreed immediately. 30 minutes later, a black SUV arrived, carrying Chief Diana Reynolds herself. Tall, silver-streaked hair, eyes that had seen every mess imaginable. She reviewed the footage, read the officer's notes, and listened to Marco's account. Then she stepped outside. "Miss Whitman," Chief Reynolds said, her voice firm and carrying across the lawn, "you're under arrest for simple assault and filing a false police report." Karen's face turned pale. "You can't do this to me. My husband was Captain Frank Whitman. Call him." "Your husband retired 8 years ago, ma'am," Chief Reynolds said evenly, "and this footage shows exactly who you are." Handcuffs clicked around her wrists. Screams, curses, and threats of lawsuits filled the air, but the Queen of Cedar Grove Estates was finally dethroned.